Welcome back after our hiatus to the Hidden History Happy Hour. You can see my background, see some things have changed, but before we get to that, Alex, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Anyone that tells you that having two children is just only as challenging as twice as much as having one child should be checked into a lunatic asylum.
It's
So
it's geometric,
it
not
it's
arithmetic.
squared, yeah. So that explains, I hope, the hiatus.
I hate to break this to you, my friend, but if you have a third one, that algorithm is even steeper.
But there has to come a time where it does just it's not additive anymore, where it's
I
just the
think
same amount of
about six, you hit the economies of scale.
right. Because I was
Actually,
thinking
I don't
maybe
know.
with
I've only ever had two.
right, if you get to 10, then the older one starts to age out and helps the oldest one is helping you
Right.
to raise the youngest one. So then it gets easier, I suppose.
Yeah, Charlotte and Harry are good. Sleeping occasionally.
Henry
Sorry,
just
sorry,
mounted. That's
Henry.
all right. That's all right. Henry just mounted. Henry is often called Harry. Shakespeare, Hal, and
See, that's
um, Henry was mounting an IRA style dirty protest just before we came on air, or at least he was midway to it, having stripped himself.
Mhm.
It might just, we're going through a heat wave in the UK. I know Americans never believe that it's hot in England, but it really is at the moment. And so he was getting ready to redecorate his bed, I think, when he was caught, but otherwise he's fine. And Charlotte is great, but she's like the princess and the pea. The
Yeah.
tiniest amount of noise, if you hiccup, if you sneeze, if you cough, that's another 45 minutes of disruption before she can settle down.
I don't want to open up a scientific debate, but I feel like you've had a massive heat wave about 3 years in a row this time of year.
It's time, I'm afraid, to bite the bullet and get aircon. I think this is the new normal.
Yeah. Well, before we get too deep into it, I am drinking actual Ukrainian freedom vodka because Slava Ukraini, I think we're going to win this thing, buddy.
Ukraine Slava. A restaurant down the road from me has just reopened from a perfectly reasonable kind of bistro to a Ukrainian restaurant. So I'm going to go next week. I am a bit more on brand with the stories we're going to tell. I'm having a Provence rosé called Minuti, and it's nice. It's not tell one light blush rosé from Provence from another. I might struggle, but this is nice.
Well, so happy to hear things are going great with the kids. I don't know if you have any other announcements. Obviously, we've been out of touch for a while. I have one, and you can see it behind me. That is not a background. That is a 1953 Model 37 U.S. Army troop transport truck. Now, you might say, Brian, why do you have this in your garage, might you?
I might.
The reason is something our viewers can find in the show notes. And for any of you at home, if you go to americablade.com, that is AMERICA blade.com, you will find my new business, which is finding, buying, restoring, and selling collectible vintage spy gear, knives, bayonets, swords, the whole nine. And we've already launched, we've already sold our first 6 items. And that truck I bought to be the symbol of the company.
I like it. Was it so 53 would put it in Korea, kind of ballpark. Did it sea service?
We don't know. It is
Oh,
without pedigree. However, what I
right.
do know is, and this is a show recommendation for people, Alex, I don't think we've talked about it. Have you watched Rogue Heroes?
I have not.
Do you know what it is?
I don't watch anything at the
Oh,
moment except two children that don't want to sleep.
that's true. Well, for anyone who's interested in history, which I assume all of us here are, I just stumbled upon a fantastic British show called Rogue Heroes. It's got possibly the next James Bond in it. It's got Dominic West in it, and it's the kind of true story of the creation of the British Special Air Service in World War II. Why do I mention that? Well,
I saw that advertised with the white berets and so forth. I haven't had a chance to see it.
it's fantastic, and there's only 2 seasons so far, but the third one's about to drop. But the reason I mention that is this truck is in that show. They
The actual truck, your
no,
actual
not
truck.
this one, but this
Ah,
exact
okay, all right.
model, because apparently they couldn't find enough of from the actual
The
40s, so
British ones,
they used
right?
this. So yeah, but it's fun. It's very much like this, Alex, this show, in the sense that part of what buyers and collectors care about is the story behind the item. So a
Right.
lot of the game is researching it, figuring out who had them, what battles they were in, quirky things.
Yeah.
We just sold it.
Provenance.
We
You gotta
just
work the
sold
provenance out.
we just sold the not the last one of, but one of the last U.S. cavalry swords ever built. It was designed by Lieutenant George S. Patton. Yes, that one. And he won the short-term battle in getting the U.S. cavalry to switch from a curved saber to a straight bladed weapon, but he lost the war because right about then mechanization came and the cavalry went out of business. But fortunately, he had some other skills. Anyway, check it out, americablade.com.
Great tip. I'm going to have a look at it. We have all manner of legal issues you will have considered in the UK for bladed articles and blades coming through the post. We even had some celebrities suggesting recently that we should not allow the sale of sharp knives anymore at all. We should be buying blunt knives for our kitchens, because that's what will solve. Everyone should not be able to have a sharp knife
Yeah.
in order to ensure that those who are inclined to stab one another are less able to do so. Where, of course, they might actually be able to sharpen it, and therefore it's just the rest of us have been inconvenienced.
And also,
Um,
you also have to have a nationwide knife buyback.
which or amnesty, right? I'm all up for a knife amnesty, just ongoing. You want to drop a knife? You've got some one of these zombie knives that you don't want to have anymore. There should be a bin available in every borough that you can just drop it in a bin, no questions asked, no problem about that.
Well, fortunately,
Except if, of course, have they been used in crime? So it does become tricky a bit on that angle. But otherwise, I'm well up for an amnesty.
well, for,
Buyback, should you be able to profit from having bought an illegal weapon? Don't know.
Well, fortunately, I was being slightly facetious, but fortunately in the US, we don't have that problem with bladed weapons. Now, if I was doing antique firearms, which I do
Right.
sometimes have access to buy, that's a whole nother level, and I'm not doing that. It's funny because even with the Second Amendment in the United States Constitution about the right to bear arms, which you guys don't have, it's the transport of them across state lines is still highly regulated. You can do it, but you got to get all kinds of
Yeah.
special licenses and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, your country still maintains state barriers that a lot of people don't understand. External to the United States, I mean, lots of foreigners like myself don't understand for things like alcohol, given that we're sitting here drinking some great booze. You need to be able to export state to state so the state that you export your wine to as an international winemaker is highly relevant and pertinent to your ability to sell on in the US. And I think a lot of people don't realize that about the land of the free.
Absolutely. And there are certain states that you just cannot import wine. At least you
Yeah.
can, yeah, a private person can't do it. A liquor store can do it, but a
It's
private.
got their own that kind of monopoly thing I hate. I've seen all manner of supposedly free market interested people try to defend that sort of monopoly on the most spurious bases.
Well, you may not recall this, although you might, given your occupation, know this, but in the United States, we still cannot buy health insurance across state lines.
Yeah, that's crazy as well. I mean
And it drives the
that's a
price.
barrier to competition.
Yeah. Well, check out americablade.com. Also, don't forget, everybody, we are still sponsored and proudly so by Wolf Project Men's Skincare, the high-end men's skincare product, thousands of repeat buyers. And because I'm burning the candle at both ends, I'm using it quite a bit. I hope it looks like it's working. You can still get it on their website,
All right.
wolfproject.co.
You look great.
Thank you. I actually lost a lot of weight, but anyway, the code is NewWolf30 and it works on the wolfproject.co. So, yeah, in fact, we moved, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit for our viewers and listeners. We used to do this an hour, we used to record these an hour later because when I was drinking more heavily, I just had to do it later in the day. But now that I've cut back and for the show, of course, I'll make the sacrifice. But now we do it an hour earlier, and we could even do it earlier if it's better for you.
That's really kind of you. But I'm just looking at the two of us at the moment, and I have not used my Wolf products for the last couple of weeks. We look like the before and after image advertising the product, and I'm afraid I'm the before. So
Well,
you're looking good.
A, I don't have two small children, and B, I think I might have better lighting in here, even though it's a garage. I take all my photographs of my stuff in here, so the lighting's quite good.
Right. All right,
Now,
I'm going to tell a couple of stories.
well, what do let, but we have to cover one current event first, though, and that is, what are you on your eighth prime minister in the last 8 years now?
No, we're on our sixth in 10 years. And that's not a record that covers itself in glory. Andy Burnham has become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He is someone who 6 weeks before he became Prime Minister was not even a member of Parliament. So it's something of a, I think in your parlance, you call it a bit of a Hail Mary from the governing party to bring him back into into cabinet and indeed to lead the party and lead the country. He is someone who had run twice before, unsuccessfully, obviously, each time to be leader of the Labour Party. And he was, at the time of his um, maneuvering to become the leader, he was the mayor of Greater Manchester. So the point is, he already had a job.
Yeah.
And say this is a party that won an enormous majority at the last
Yeah.
election. For those people who are not in the UK and may not follow the details as much as I do, our parliament has 650 members of parliament. Labour won 411 of those 650 seats, an overwhelming majority. And of course, I declare an interest because I was one of the defeated candidates on the other side of that contest,
But
of that wave of Labour
hold
success.
on, hold on. Salute to you for putting yourself in the arena.
Much obliged, the man in the arena. Mm. Point being, the Labour Party, having been in government now for 2 years, had said to itself and to the world, none of those 400 plus are good enough. They've got to go outside of the House and bring in someone. I don't think this is actually a party political point. It's just a statement of fact. They had to go outside of the House and bring back someone who was doing another job for their party in another role outside of Parliament to lead them. And in doing that, they had to engineer a by-election in Parliament. That's, you call them a special election. So somebody stood down unnecessarily to create a new election, and then
Wow.
Burnham contested that election and won it. And then that therefore creates a special election, a by-election in his mayoral role that he held before. But I still have this to say about it, Brian. I admire the decisiveness. They were clearly on the wrong track. I am not a Labour Party member. I am a Conservative and I campaigned against them. I stood against them at the last election.
Sure.
But they realised they were going down the wrong track and they had the gumption and the guts to say, not just to their leader who stuck in, who tried really hard to hang on, but to say to one another, none of us can get this done. We need to go over and get that guy back in. And by whatever it takes, if it causes a by-election we might lose in Greater Manchester, let's do that. If it causes a by-election in Parliament that, at one point looks like they might not win that and he might be humiliated and the party will be embarrassed, let's get it done. And I would just, it's very easy to mock it and I enjoy mocking it, but they they were on a slide. They were on an uninterrupted slide to failure in this parliament, and now there is at least a question. And I know it sounds like faint praise, but I don't mean it to be. I actually admire their gumption in being willing to change course.
Yeah. Well, I don't, far be it for me to comment on your politics, and I don't know these personalities, but what I do know is that on his first day in office, your new prime minister, Grant, reversed Starmer's dumbass decision to deny us the use of our bases in the war in Iran and let us
Oh
do.
yeah,
So salute to him at least for that.
Slava Ukraine and Slava Iran, the war in Iran.
Whatever they say. God
Slava
bless the
freedom in
USA.
Iran. But I would also say that the government that we just got rid of, or the Labour Party just got rid of, had a plan to severely limit the right to access jury trials, which in your country would be absolute anathema. And if
Oh,
you
yeah.
look at Magna Carta, you would think in my country would be too. Um, they have abandoned that plan as well. So, they are really that right off the bat, they are doing some good things. And
What was even the logic of that? What was their reasoning?
so they claimed it would be faster and cheaper. It actually is neither. Juries don't actually, I can go as long as you like on this, but juries don't actually cost more money, and the delays are basically everywhere in the system. And the fact that you've got a jury making a decision rather than a bench of magistrates is not the thing that does it. The other thing that they plan to do was to deny you the right of appeal for a big clutch of cases to the Crown Court if you'd been convicted in the Magistrates Court. So not only did they want to have many more cases tried in the lower courts than would go to the upper court
Right.
traditionally, the higher court, they also wanted to severely restrict the right of appeal. On the last year for which we have data on this, more than 1,000 people appealed successfully from those convictions. And that was all, that's near as damn it. It was about, not wasn't quite 50%, but it was near as damn it half of the cases that were appealed. So half of the people who appealed were successful in that appeal, were subsequently found not guilty. Think of the severity of a criminal conviction to somebody. Think of the difference it makes to their lives now and their families. And then times that by 1,000 and times it by every single year.
Yeah.
And that's what the government wanted to deny people the ability to do, to have the ability to appeal from the decision of that first court. And I just, as of right, I mean, so you would no longer have had the right to appeal immediately. And I'm really pleased that this new government is abandoning that, even though I'm not a Labour Party supporter.
So it sounds like, I mean, not to get too far in the weeds because we got some great stories coming up, but it sounds like after the Starmer debacle, they not only brought Burnham in, but they kind of redid a bunch of their platform. Now, can
Yeah.
Burnham just do that on his own, or is that a
Oh
whole
yeah. So
process?
we are having a big debate now about what right they have to take up policy positions outside the past ones that they had set out. And the first point about that is a huge number of the policies that that in my country that the Starmer administration have pursued weren't in their manifesto at all. So wanting to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, or this jury trials plan that I was discussing with you, well, they're very thinly veiled support by way of a private member's bill on assisted dying, state-assisted suicide. Uh, None of those things were in their manifesto. So the ability to drop those things is quite easy. Morally and on a principle basis, it becomes more difficult to divert from the things that actually were in the manifesto. But actually, Starmer had tried and failed to deliver on a whole clutch of stuff. So there's still lots of green field for Burnham to explore on going back to the manifesto and trying to deliver some of it that Starmer hadn't managed to do. What he's got to do is show some guts
Yeah.
because Starmer U-turned on so many policies, and it's demoralizing for your party to order your ministers and order your primary advocates to go out and defend the party line in the morning, and they go out knowing that that position might well be reversed in the afternoon, and more often than not, it was. And when you get to that point, people just say, "Oh, gee, I've had enough." And the
By the
second
way,
thing,
what you just described is a Wednesday for every United States cabinet member right now.
right, right, well, I well understand and sympathise, but the second issue in the UK is you can have any position on policy you like, any position on principle you like. If you think you're going to lose your seat, then you are suddenly willing to do anything and try anything to shake the kaleidoscope. And polling for the Labour Party under Starmer was getting so bad, and so many people in the backbenches thought they would, and cabinet thought, and government thought they would lose their seats, that it became much more appetizing to take what might on paper look like a real risk if you know that, so, according to sustained polling, you're going to be out on your ear anyway.
So just a quick translation note for our American viewers and listeners. Did you say Changao Islands? What is
Chagos.
yeah,
Chagos.
so Chango, so those are better known in the United States as Diego Garcia, which is a major strategic base for the United States. So that would have been very damaging to us. So I'm glad he reversed
Oh, look, the Chagos Islands, which include Diego Garcia, a great landing strip for you, but also for us, it is a strategically important asset that's never been part of Mauritius, apart from being lumped in with them for colonial convenience in administrative terms. No cultural or relevant history there for it to be gifted to Mauritius. He also, this is how sweet, how brilliant a negotiator he was. He didn't just want to give away sovereign territory. He wanted to pay Mauritius for the privilege. I mean, this is the sort of genius that our last Prime Minister and his now defenestrated Attorney General were, that they wanted to pay billions of pounds for the privilege of handing over these islands. And the one group of people they completely ignored in that process were the Chagossians, were the people who lived on the Chagos Islands, who were deported, as it happens by a Labour government in the past, to make way for the military facilities, who consistently said they were nothing to do with Mauritius. And they wanted to have their own ability to govern themselves, or at least be part of Britain. The opinions might vary whether they thought they should be an overseas territory of Britain, be in extremis independent, but there was no real appetite to be Mauritian. But even if there had been, the main thing that Chagossians were saying was, how dare you just
Yeah.
decide this without even involving us, which is what Starmer did.
Well, listen, once the Ohio National Guard conquers Greenland, we will give them a vote on who they'd like to belong to. That seems fair.
That seems fair, and if the good people of Greenland decided to join the Chagos Islands, we'll only have ourselves to blame.
As we have been talking about prime ministers, it seems only fair to pivot to Mr. Churchill.
Yeah. This is a story I told in the second book, More Lessons from History. But it's a story about
More lessons from history, people. It's still available. Go get it. It's amazing, as is the first volume.
Thank you very much. I just got my sales figures from Backpack, and it looks pretty good.
Nice.
This is a story about two of my favorite figures from history, Montgomery and Churchill. And Montgomery had a pretty significant gig at the start of the Second World War in Belgium. How things didn't work out so well at the beginning, and we retrenched, and we moved forwards again. But nevertheless, you'd think he had a lot of things on his mind. But Montgomery, as he was General Montgomery, as he was then, um, was grilling his young officers, not as you might imagine on strategy or the art of war. He said to them, "How would you define a gentleman?" Clearly, this is an eye to the important things in any situation as the Nazis are bearing down on you. This is what was occupying Montgomery's mind. And his junior officers were not doing very well, in his eyes at least. And he offered them a get out clause. He concluded the conversation with them and said, "Well, look, we'll just ask Winston when he's next over with us." And that might just sound like a smooth get out line for them and for him. But where others would talk emptily, Monty always followed through. So Churchill, on his tour of the British defences against the Nazi looming threat in Belgium, is pulled aside by Montgomery, who, who says, "These chaps want to know, Prime Minister, how you should define a gentleman." And I like to think that Churchill's first answer was both off the cuff and sort of, for God's sake, can't we get on with more important things? And Churchill said, "Well, a gentleman, I know one when I see one." And yeah, fine. But his audience had clearly very respectful and muted, but plain dissatisfaction at this rather sparse response. And Churchill therefore looked at him and said, "A gentleman is someone who is only rude intentionally." Right? And that is in so many people's diet. It's in so many. Like, I just love that you're in the midst of preparing to face the Nazi onslaught when it really looked like they were going to blitzkrieg their way
Yeah.
uh, all the way through Europe, and you've got time for that sort of discussion. A gentleman is somebody who is only rude intentionally. What a great distinction! Not someone who's not rude, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yes, I got it. Yeah, I
someone
followed
who's
you.
only rude intentionally. I like
Pick,
it.
picking up what you're laying down. I like to think we qualify for that. I've been called acerbic, but only when it's necessary, you know?
I am occasionally rude unintentionally, but then very embarrassed afterwards. And I think it's good to have enough EQ to be self-aware enough to know that you didn't mean something that came across badly. But most of the time when I'm rude, and I am rude, I mean it. I mean it to be rude.
And
I mean the person to understand that I'm being rude because I want them to understand I'm being rude. And and that's, I think, it's got to be part of your role in society to, from time to time, be willing to say to somebody, here's what I think about you.
and we will put in the show notes for everybody our prior episode about rudeness, in which you featured as a character, maybe the
Oh, I
only
did.
featured as a character.
That's the only time I told a story about myself. But yes, I was very rude to Jeffrey Howe, and my God, he deserved it. I don't think I can't. It's embarrassing now to reflect. I was also very rude to Edward Heath, but I think it might have been a footnote in the
I think
first
so.
book.
I guess I've had.
He absolutely deserved it. Um, right, I'm going to tell you another story now because I like this story about we call it the phony war. You guys
Yeah.
weren't even in it yet, but that's an expression that can
Yeah,
cast
no,
over
we'll
quite a
have
long
that
period
for
of
another
time.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning of the Second World War, when hostilities had been declared and the rival forces had been deployed, not quite exactly where they had, pulled stumps in the First World War, but not that far off, deployed on the continent, and they were uneasily eyeing one another across the divide without much fighting at all going on for quite some time. And our press derided that as that period of time as the phony war. And you better believe they longed for that phony war in years that followed. But anyway, during the phony war in 1939, one of the greatest threats to the soldiers of the British Expeditionary Forces was apparently venereal disease. And the press in Lille complained bitterly that the trade that was being blocked. I mean, Lille is bloody front and center
Yeah, yeah.
in. This is why I'm drinking French wine. Although no, I don't think anyone makes wine round Lille, and if they did, nobody would drink it. But it's still I'm drinking a French wine in honor of this story.
Close enough.
Yeah. The press in Lille complained bitterly that the trade routes to them were being blocked up, preventing the ladies of Lille from getting perfume and makeup. And of course, the Nazis um, were on top of everyone's press, and in fact, then as now, enemies get as much material from open source information as they do from human intelligence and secret sources.
Yeah.
There's a great demonstration of both the knowledge of the conversation their foes were having and a virtuoso display of air power and superiority from the Nazis, and very unusually, a bit of humor from the Germans. The Germans bombed Lille with two heavy bombers worth of perfume and makeup, right? And they took to the skies uncontested. They flew over Lille, not a shot fired, and they opened the bomb doors and they dropped two heavy bombers worth of perfume and makeup on Lille. And I just think that's brilliant. Uh, in light of I don't mean to make light of the later privations that the good burghers of Lille and the rest of that part of France faced under the Nazis. I
Yeah.
think that the Germans there display a level of humor which you might not otherwise associate with them. And also, when I first told that story to audiences, and as you know, Brian, but it's worth rehearsing for people who might not have heard this earlier in the podcast, I told a lot of stories online during lockdown. That's how um, these anecdotes from me started. This one felt rather slight. It felt rather short. So I'd done my verification. It is true. The Germans bombed Lille with makeup and perfume, but it still felt like I told a short story. So I added to it with this great thing from Malcolm Muggeridge. We called Germany Zwölfland, 12 land, in our wartime codes. And the Germans had we always talk about Britain breaking the code and Enigma and so forth. But at the start of the war, they had broken our code so comprehensively in so publicly known a fashion that in festive season in Istanbul, early in the war, same sort of time I'm talking about with the Lille bombing before things got serious and the humor dropped away, they played the anthems of the countries attending, right? So they're at a hotel party and they play the British national anthem for the Brits and they play the French national anthem. When they played the German national anthem in one of the grand hotels in Istanbul, the German embassy staff stood up and sang Zwölfland, Zwölfland über alles towards the table of Brits in the audience, just to say, like, we know your code. And the wonderful thing about bureaucracy from this story for me, other than I find that very funny, but the other thing I love is that we doggedly carried on calling Germany Volkland in our codes until the end of the war. It was completely. We
Well,
just stuck to our rules.
as someone who's supervised social engineering and password guessing, Wolfland wasn't actually that hard to figure out, even if you hadn't broken anyone's codes.
You might think complete with umlaut. Yeah. You might well think.
That's
So those are my stories for today, and I'm looking forward to speaking again on our next episode. And I think we might be joined by a friend of yours.
Yes. I think we're going to bring our buddy David Milo back. You guys may
Good
remember
guy.
fantastic episode about the Burma operations by the Brits in World War II. David is a 30-year combat veteran in the British Army. He also is the owner and operator of Anzac Blade, which is an operation in Australia that he's been running for 20 years, doing exactly what America Blade is doing now. So in a way, I'm kind of his franchisee. So when we come across particularly juicy stories about our weapons, like the patent sword, maybe we'll come on and talk about them.
That'd be great. And if we can put in the show notes for this episode, the story of Fort Budge Budge,
Oh,
where it's one guy on a sword against a fort of Her Majesty's enemy, His Majesty's enemies. Oh God, Her Majesty's enemies? I think Her Majesty's enemies.
yeah,
Um, who prevails? That's a good Blade story as well.
it is. And that is our pilot episode, ladies and gentlemen. If you, for some reason,
Ah,
don't get to look at us, that is on audio only back in the day. and it also involves my hometown. So please go check out the pilot of the Hidden History Happy Hour, which is in the show notes. And I hope you enjoyed this one. A little bit of a shorter one. Trying to give you guys, it's summertime, got a lot of stuff to do, but listen to us at the beach or watch us, and do check out americablade.com. And we will be back soon. Cheers, my
Thanks, Brian. Cheers.